So today I'm going to change out the engine motor mount for the RSX. So that's going to be located on the passenger side of the engine bay. So right over here, this is the main motor mount I'll be changing. And so you can see that they have 3 bolts connected to the chassis. And I'm changing it because it's starting to tear a little bit, and I'm going to change it now before it just gets worse. And then you can see there's an ABS line here that is just kind of a ground for it, connected to the motor mount as well. And then you have 2 bolts connected to the engine, and just kind of that center bolt there that just connects the bracket to the mount itself. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I'll be changing it with. All right, so this is what I have today. I'm just changing out one mount today, and I'm going to be changing it with right here. It's the HASPORT Performance engine mount for the DC5. You can see it gives you this really nice big metal bracket here with some, I think, polyurethane or rubber. I think I got 62A street, so it's not going to be too. It's not going to vibrate too much, but it's probably the lowest that they do for the motor mounts. There's higher tiers as well, but I got the 62A, and you can see this nice kind of etching here. So it's just kind of a nice look as well. And this is right here is the part number. So it's DC5RH, and all those kind of serial numbers below it. So as long as you get DC5RH, that's going to be the right hand side of the car. It comes with all this hardware as well, as you can see here. And then I also have like 3 bolts for the Honda bolts, because this hardware doesn't correspond to it. This bracket comes with it as well, and you can see that it's just going to fit in here. And this is where the 3 bolts are going to come into play from Honda. So you can see the part number. It's going to be 90163S5A000. So they don't really give you any instructions on how to put the motor mount together, but I can kind of decipher what it's going to be like. So we have these 3 washers here. So we're going to put this first washer in this long bolt. We already know the long bolt's going to come into here. So as you can see, that first bolt goes right through. We're going to put another washer on this side, and this is where that nut's going to be. And that's just these washers are just gonna keep the sides from scratching against the black as you're torquing it down to 40 foot-pounds. And then you're gonna see that there's a few other bolts here. We have these 3 bolts here for the Honda one. So these bolts and all this stuff here is gonna go here. So you're gonna get another washer for this long bolt, and it's pretty much gonna go here. We have that long little spline that has a nut with it. We're going to put that there. I don't have a replacement for that today, so I'm just going to use the existing nut, and that should be fine. And the rest of these 3 things is extra, but what it's going to be is actually, we're going to use it for that ground wire for the ABS that I was showing you earlier. So it's going to attach here, and then we're going to take this little small washer, put it in this long neck here. Doing it with one hand. Once that's in, then we're going to put it in here. So before we get started taking off the motor mount, I'm going to protect the car. Since this car's paint is still looking pretty good, I'm just going to cover just the important areas. We're going to cover the fender area, and I have this little kind of microfiber cover here on the inside. That's just going to cover the area. We're just going to clip it on and just cover the headlight as well. You don't want anything falling, like a ratchet or anything falling on your paint. Otherwise, it's going to scratch. Same with your headlights. So now that the car is covered, we're going to get right into the motor mount. And today we're going to change out this motor mount. We had to take off the bolts first before we get anything. If we can crack open the bolts, then we're good to go. We can proceed with taking everything off. If we can't, then we're going to run into some other issues, etc. So that's what we're going to get started with. Let's zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to need probably a 17 millimeter for those first 2. And then we might even have a little trouble taking this out. So we're going to have to use an open wrench there. But we're going to start with just a 17 millimeter deep socket right here. And we're going to use the breaker bar and just see if we can crack it open. That was very easy, and we're going to do the same thing with this next bolt here. And we're going to do the same thing, crack it open. And it's loosening, so we're good there. And then we have a 17mm deep socket, but it's not long enough for this area here, as you can see. It doesn't go down all the way, it's hitting. All right, so I was able to find a longer 17mm deep socket. This is the DeWalt's deep socket. And as I put it in, it looks like it's gripping some of the thread, so this is good. This means we could torque it to spec as well as take it off. So I'm gonna try breaking it off there. Hopefully it has enough thread for it, but we'll see. And I'm spinning it and it's going with it, so we're good to go there. All the bolts have been broken loose that are the hardest ones, so I know I can get it off now. The other thing I'm going to do is take off these bolts that connect the bracket to the chassis. We'll get there. We might have to move the ABS. What I'm going to do right now is bring the car up and then put a jack stand right underneath the engine. That way it has a lot more room and a lot of support before I take off this motor mount, because once I take it off, it's only going to be hanging on 3 sides. So let's get started there. So you can see here the RSX is raised and placed on jack stands on each side. You know, I have that longer jack just to kind of push it up in the middle. But let me show you where I kind of propped up the jack. On the other side, I put this jack on the transmission. At this point, you know, I don't want to damage the oil pan by just putting it solely on this jack stand. So I put a little piece of cardboard to distribute weight and just prevent scratching. But the jack stand is just pushing up against the oil pan because that's really the only jack point that we have at this moment. But I just kind of jacked it up, put a little firmness in it, and it should be good to go. Yeah. So we're gonna take off the motor mount now and just see how it is. And if we need to bring the engine up a little bit, we'll put a little more force on the jack stand just to push it up. So we're gonna start working on the mount. What we're gonna do is just move all the peripheral things that we need to get out of the way. The first thing we're gonna get out of the way is the 10mm bolt that connects the ground to the old motor mount. Be careful when you take it out because it might just fall down and you don't want that to happen. But we have the bolt out. We're just gonna move the ground for a bit. We're gonna come back to that later. Next thing we're gonna do is just take out the power steering reservoir because we're gonna need a little bit more room. And it should come out pretty easy. We're just gonna put it on the side so you can see that mounts out, so we can move it in various ways. And then the next thing we're gonna do is take off this bolt here that connects the ABS module. I have hood dampers now, so it's hard to use a 6-inch extension. So I'm just gonna use a regular 10 and take it out from here. All right, we took that down. It's a little loose, but there's another 10mm bolt where my hand is pointed right now. So you're gonna need that 6-inch extension, at least a 6, maybe a 10, and you're gonna put it right in there. It's very obvious. Maybe you can't see it on camera, but 10mm with a black bracket, you can totally see it. All right, and once you take that out, it's going to be this bolt that comes out from there. Stick an extension in there and see if we can get it. All right, so at this point, I've loosened the ABS, and so you can see it moves around. You can't take it off completely, but it gives you a little bit more clearance to access things. We have two choices here. We can use an open wrench to take out this bolt, but we need to crack it first. It's torqued at 40 foot-pounds, so we're still going to use a 14 millimeter on a breaker bar. And I'm going to try to stick it underneath and just kind of loosen it up. So as you can see, I got it in, and then now it's moving. I'm just going to take it out and just use a 14 millimeter here just to take out that bolt. So I was able to take out one 14 millimeter. And now I'm just going to take out the other one. Yeah, the other one out. And the power steering, we're going to do something very similar. We're going to move the power steering line. All right, so we just moved the power steering line up, as you can see there. And then now we're able to just use the breaker bar to just kind of loosen. Before we fully loosen, we're going to start taking out the other bolts as well. So we're going to take off this one here. And then now we're going to take out the mount. All right. So this one we're going to reuse, as you can see here. So we're going to keep that aside, and we're going to take off the last bolts. All right. Now that you've seen the bolts get removed, we've pretty much taken all the 3 bolts out by moving the ABS line in the reservoir, getting access to that center bolt there. And then we have this bracket here. We took those out. The car is mounted with a jack stand underneath the oil pan, so the engine is being held up. So we can just pretty much pull it out now. So this is the motor mount bracket. And then we need to take out the motor mount itself. Okay, if you can see here, so now we need to take out the motor mount, and it's really hard to pull out. So I think the technique, from what I've discovered, is you can pull it out a little bit and you'll still have some trouble. But if you pull it out and then turn it a little bit, it should just kind of pull out from the back. You see, you want to turn it and pull out. Pull from the top here, and it should just come out in that same motion. This is pretty disgusting. It's very cobwebby. There's like stuff there. So I'm gonna clean this out. So this is a quick video of the old and the new. You can see what it looks like here. Looks a lot better. The old one looks like it's kind of has a little corrosion and rust on the sides, but we're changing it out with this new HASPORT one, and it's gonna look real good. So you can see I've already cleaned out a lot of the crust and the disgusting things inside of this motor mount chassis area. And so all we're going to do now is just reinstall the motor mounts. I'm going to put some gloves on, and we're going to put the new HASPORT bracket on first. It's going to be this bracket here. We're going to pretty much lay it down and just put all the bolts on. And we're just gonna dry fit and see if everything comes back the way it's supposed to be. All right, so we might have to put the mount on first. As you can see there, lift that out, put it right underneath. And we're going to put the mount back into place. You can see everything's starting to fit. We'll have to kind of wiggle it around just to make sure everything goes into place. All right, I'm going to take this bracket and just kind of put it in first, because we might have trouble doing it later. So we have everything installed now. If you just saw that time lapse, everything's put back together. We have the engine HASPORT motor mount installed, and here's a little closer up of it. So over here was the ABS ground, and we just used the existing bolts. And for this kind of piece here, we're just using the existing bolt there. But everything else is new hardware. The only thing that was different is due to the clearance of the HASPORT and the power steering reservoir, there is this spacer that they give you that kind of pushes it up a little bit, and that gives it enough clearance so it won't hit itself. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching the install, and we're pretty much done with all 4 motor mounts. More to come on future projects, but thanks for watching.